Thank everybody. Okay, I want to call the meeting to order and thank everybody for coming today, making sure that you've all signed in so that we will have you represented in the minutes as having attended. I don't know if we have any public comments tonight, but anybody with any public comments? No? With that, should we go straight into the discussion of the focus 40?
Yeah.
Okay.
Both of the subcommittees have talked a little bit about Focus 40, and but I think this would be a good time for the whole group to talk about it with respect to what we put in a letter to the Focus 40 group regarding the process and their big ideas. And I'll just mention that Scott Hanway, what's your position with Focus 40?
So I lead the transit planning within MassDOT, and that project was done by my group. At one time I was the project manager as well, but that turned into Jen at some point as we were reassigning projects.
Right, and Jen was with us, I think, in June to talk with Wellen, and you actually talked with the capital investment finance subcommittee like a couple of months ago. That's right. The process started.
Yeah.
So if there's anything you want to say, you can at any point in time. I just mentioned this to the group that we were having a discussion in case they wanted to just listen in, and I gave them the option of looking on the stream and calling in or just joining us. So if Scott, if you want to say anything, just chime in.
Sure.
And please, at any time, please feel free. And also, if you want to sit at this table, that's fine. If you want to sit where you are, that's fine. But please, any knowledge and any information is greatly welcomed.
I appreciate that, and just as a heads up, I'll probably need to step out around 5:45, so I apologize in advance if I have to leave before the conversation's over.
Sure. And I think the stream stays up on YouTube for how long?
What did we say, 6 months?
Okay, all right. Okay. So if you do want to see, that'd be fine too. So what I was thinking we would do is just kind of run through the next priorities and the big ideas, and just get a sense of how people feel about them. And so I'll just maybe ask if you think it's a good idea or a bad idea, and for those that we have a consensus on, I will note that, and for those where there isn't a consensus, then I'll just ask for one or two people from both sides to say why. I'm assuming everyone knows about the report, the draft on the website. So, all right. So we'll just start with Blue Line 2040, and I'm not going to go over what we're doing right now. Maybe we'll swing back to that. There's a big enough list in what we're planning. The big ideas, I think, can occupy most of the time that we voted for. And so on what we're planning, the downtown pedestrian connection between red and blue lines. How do people feel about that? Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we have one. How do you feel, Amy?
I absolutely think it's a great idea.
Andrew?
Yeah.
And I'm ambivalent. So
What makes you ambivalent about it?
I'm ambivalent partly because initially I like the idea because I like walking a lot, but then I listened to Arcadi's objections to it in the CF meeting, and I thought he had some good arguments. So now I'm ambivalent. So let's hear your objection.
Yeah, I'd like to hear it. So basically the objection is that this was kind of thrown out there as an excuse not to do the red-blue connector, and it does not accomplish either of the goals of the red-blue connector, because it is a short connection, but it's a long walk, because you have to walk from the red line to the orange line, all the way down the orange line platform, through this new connection, all the way down the other orange line platform, halfway down yet another orange line platform, and then down the hall to the blue line, which is also a lot of changes of levels. You have to go up at least 2 staircases.
Right, and then your other argument though is that you want that
Right.
the goal is to alleviate some of the.
Right, the other sort of, one of the big benefits of the red-blue connector is that it reduces the number of people transferring through some fairly narrow hallways and stairways, whereas this does, well, pretty much the exact opposite. And especially at Downtown Crossing, but also at Park Street, it takes a long time for everyone to get off the train and get on the train. And there's a lot of sort of pedestrian congestion, especially at Downtown Crossing, especially at the back of the train going toward Ashmont and Braintree. And that's only gonna get worse with more people trying to transfer, colliding with more people getting off the train, combined with trains running more frequently. And having a red-blue connector would allow some of those people to simply not go there and transfer at a different station, rather than increasing dwell time at the station. And the problem with dwell time at the station is that the headway on the whole line is determined by how quickly a train can come in after the previous train goes out, plus how long the train sits in the station, with the longest dwell time on the line determining the headway for the whole line. And right now, I think that's Downtown Crossing. So basically, any seconds you can shave off at Downtown Crossing is more service for the red line.
So you want to say something?
I completely agree with all those concerns, and I share those concerns. But I didn't think that I had read anything that said that that proposed connector and the Downtown Crossing connector and the red to blue at Charles were mutually exclusive. Is that documented somewhere, that if they did one, they wouldn't do the other? Because I'm in favor of the one that we're talking about, the Downtown Crossing connection, only because I thought it was like a short-term mitigation, because the red-blue at Charles was like a 10-year away project.
It happened to pop up right around the same time that people started talking about red-blue connector again.
Sure.
So kind of reading between the lines,
Okay.
considering what happened with the red-blue connector the last time.
Good point.
Also, it requires some considerable expense, because you have to dig under existing buildings or through the basements of existing buildings.
But
Like, there's no room under the street.
But to Stefan's argument, I mean, it is under, we're imagining, so they do have that as, you know, an idea. So it's not like it's dropped, but I think your argument is that if they do that superstation, you know, then the red blue line, you know, connection will go away. Interesting.
It is interesting. I guess for me, I hadn't thought of it in terms of the, how it's really inconvenient if there's up and down stairs and over and through, and especially for handicapped people or the elderly, that's not going to be very convenient for them if it is imagined as something that people are walking up and down and over and under. It's, you know, I don't know how many people are actually going to use it for that.
So now, having had that discussion, let's do another vote on it. So people in favor? Still?
Yeah.
Still?
I'm still going to be in
Still,
favor.
you know,
My comment?
yes.
Being someone who's biased towards the red-blue extension north from Wonderland to Lynn, because I live in Lynn, and still optimistic that Amazon will pick Suffolk Downs. I know, blindly optimistic I might be, but if Amazon does go into Suffolk Downs, I think there'll be the best impetus in several generations to extend the blue line to Lynn, and if that happens, there'll be immense pressure to extend the blue line to Charles. That's all, I think, in a 15-year time frame, so that's primarily why I support the short-term goal. But I want to be on record as saying, yeah, I completely share all of our party's points. Right. They're very valid. I have just those same concerns.
Yeah. Well, I think then what we can say in the letter is that, you know, to the extent that we support the downtown pedestrian connection, that we definitely still want to see the red-blue connection, and that without it, you know, the downtown connection, you know, will be more of a problem than a solution. You we'll get to work this all out in the letter. Fortunately, the comment period was extended to the 22nd of October, so it gives us some time. I'm going to try and whip out the first draft by the end of next week so that
Okay,
we can discuss
Scott
it.
also has a point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I really want to listen rather than talk more, but just because I'm also, in addition to my involvement with this project, also have been doing work on the Red Blue Connector, the Charles Street connector. So just two things I wanted to make sure the group sort of understood. One is that I think all the points that you made are right on. I do think that what sometimes gets lost is that the connection between the blue and red at Charles would also be a relatively kind of clunky transfer. There'd be some pretty big horizontal and a significant vertical distance to be covered that would be certainly fully accessible, but right, at least the way we've conceived it already would, the way it was looked at 9 years ago would be using the same two elevator shafts that move people from the concourse to the red line today would also be the ones that would take you down to the blue line, so we'd be sort of reducing somewhat, at least somewhat capacity on elevator movements there. So I think it's important with the Red Blue Connector Charles to remember that that's not a totally smooth transfer. It also doesn't really work for red line south riders. If you're trying to get from like JFK to UMass or Dorchester or Quincy to the blue line, it's probably not the way you would end up making the connection because it'll be quicker to continue to do it the way you do. I think the reason why Focus 40 has put the pedestrian connection and then some other concepts in play is that as planners, we were very interested in really trying to explore the best way to make this connection. And I think the Red Blue Connector at Charles, which is certainly not something we're saying we wouldn't do in Focus 40, is really something that was kind of handed down as a legal commitment. And when we did the work 10 years ago, we weren't allowed to explore other alternatives, making that connection by rail in a different direction, doing it with a pedestrian connection. So I think we were simply suggesting that it would be good to do some planning work to make sure before you make any of these investments, a pedestrian connection, a Red Blue Connector Charles, that we had enough information to make sure we're making the right decision, the most cost-effective decision. So that's just a little bit of.
No, very appreciated.
I'll keep quiet the rest
No,
of the
no,
time.
No, please don't.
Just
No,
something
having
that-
you here is
Yeah,
valuable.
No, by all means.
And they're all, and as Blue Line riders, my daughter and I, we're in favor of any of these ways that you can connect the two lines. So.
No, be encouraging too. So no, don't you hold back. I mean, and as I said, we'll continue discussion and it's the kind of feedback. Once you make comments, you really do want to hear from the people. I know when you get thousands of comments, it's hard to respond to everyone's view, but you generally know there's a reason for why people are thinking something. If you don't agree with it, as long as you hear the reasoning, it makes you feel better about the process the decision is made. So Craig, what we're talking about is the pedestrian, downtown pedestrian connection between the red and blue lines, So we're just trying to get a sense of whether people were in favor or not in order to determine how we counted on it in the letter. And so there's a split decision here. Well, more people in favor than not, but how do you feel about it?
I know enough to be dangerous on it.
But that goes without saying.
Yeah. I haven't looked at the turning downtown crossing into one big mega station. I think it's going to cost in connecting the blue is going to cost a lot of money to try to solve what I'd rather just extend the blue line. I wouldn't extend it to Charles. I wouldn't support that. I think I completely agree that it's a dumb idea to curve it back up. I'd rather see the blue line eventually. The proposals that have taken it essentially replaced it with a D line. And the first step to doing that would be to connect it somewhere else, either Park Street or somewhere else.
Okay.
I think making the mega station is going to cost a lot of money just to make connections that are you can do above ground. I'd rather just connect the service.
All right, good, thanks. I'm not going to go through all of the replanning for a given project, just so that we can kind of distribute our ideas, our feedback amongst the various services. So for the Green Line, I mean, all of the road planning kind of looks what you want to see. If anyone looks at those and says, I'd like to see how people feel about it, let me know, we'll discuss it. Well, on the red line, since we have Craig here, how do you feel about the Mattapan high-speed line phase 2 implementation of reimagining?
What's the, is this the Focus 40?
Yeah.
Yeah. As I remember, it was mainly punted at the Focus 40, correctly? It was a waiting on the results of the, in the further details, everybody wants to comment on the Mattapan line until the analysis, the most recent analysis is completed?
I don't remember. I mean, so that's
So,
that might be why it's in the we're planning phase.
Yeah, so essentially where I think everything's left is there was supposed to be an analysis of the Mattapan high-speed line there was an analysis of the Mattapan high-speed line that was conducted. I think it went to Gonneville. Gonneville said, hold on, you can't release it yet. We need to redo some things. And it's sitting there. And because there's this analysis that they spent a whole lot of money with a consultant to do, it hasn't gotten public yet, that folks worried others don't want to actually commit to any plans there.
Okay.
So it's kind of this weird holding pattern.
Okay.
And everybody's kind of wondering what that is. So so folks worry was extremely light on what they would propose for Mattapan high-speed line, which I was a little disappointed on.
Okay.
Because I was hoping at least in kind of the further out stuff.
Right.
Would have been in the kind of the folks were kind of dreaming section, if you will, about the more ambitious stuff. They would have had a comment had an ambitious idea kind of thrown out there.
Okay. All right. Well, we count on you to keep track of that much more so than anyone else. That's why I went to you on it. And as far as
but that we should do something to kind of follow up to see. I should do something to follow up with that analysis. I don't know the right person to follow up with, but I should look at that.
all right. Well, if Gonneville put the hold on it, then he might be the person.
Yeah,
to reach out to. And we wouldn't have to ask them to come to a meeting. You just need to send them an email and say what's up.
Yep.
To give us a timeline or something. So for the orange line, there's any capacity improvements, 3-minute headways. Well, yeah, that sounds good. For silver line, bus rapid transit to Everett, and that's be in favor of that. Yeah, all right.
I think it's in that one in particular, it's just a question of the logistics of what are the devil's in the details. Are they proposing a dedicated bus lane, or are they just going to extend the silver line past Chelsea up? Get the road there that kind of ends at 99, kind of up. And it's going on already very heavy. Is that 16 right there? Are they going to send the silver line kind of back roads connect over to 16 over to Wellington, and it's just sitting in traffic in 16 all day. It's not really it.
Last I heard, it would be at least partially on a new roadway, not on 16 because buses aren't allowed on 16 because it's a parkway.
Okay.
But it would be partially a new roadway along the commuter rail line.
All right. And so I'll put a plus on that with some hash out discussion.
Yeah, I think it's the same issue you have with the civil access to Chelsea works great for the dedicated parts of does, but then it stops at the drawbridge or gets stuck in tunnel traffic. It gets stuck in tunnel traffic.
What is the revised deadline on comments?
The 22nd.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so I will do my best to get the first draft out to you next week, probably towards the end of next week, especially if I don't end up going down to New York, I'll have some extra time. Okay, for bus 2040, fleet expansion to serve fleet expansion to serve bus and bus rapid transit network. Yes. Any objections? Better bus project phase 3 implementation network redesign. Of course, that's going to depend on the redesign. And I'm going to be curious to see the redesign because I don't imagine people moving much, from where they are, so we'll see. And
I mean, the reason and I was going to touch on this in the meeting minutes, or the subcommittee meeting minutes, but I think the biggest find there is opportunities where things shifted for some reason 10 years ago, because there was a restriction or something, and then they never got shifted back. So there might be some hidden gems in that they can find.
All right. And
I'll expand upon that in the meeting minutes.
okay. Phase conversion to zero emission fleet, yes. All right. And priority bus rapid transit corridors. Big yes. All right. Cool. And commuter rail, station investments, infill stations, connection with rapid transit. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. You look like you have a
I
question.
can't remember what the connection to rapid transit entailed.
And
Scott, can you address that?
Sure, yeah, I think it was, and this is something we're looking at as part of the MBTA rail vision process, which is underway now, that our team is leading in conjunction with Railroad Ops. It's basically looking for any of the opportunities that may still remain to sort of intercept commuter rail customers before they get to the downtown terminal station. So, you know, there had been, during previous Blue Line to Land planning, there had been talk of some kind of people mover connection between Wonderland and a new infill station in Revere, for example. The city of Cambridge has a lot of planning work going on right now in the LA area, and there's been some discussion, you know, with the city about whether the Red Line connection on the Fitchburg line might want to migrate from Porter back to LA, or it could also be sort of more of an employment destination in the future than Porter itself is, although it's admittedly, you know, not as like, you know, it's not as short a connection as you have at Porter, but it could be, it has the potential to grow more as an employment hub than Porter does. Those were sort of the two are high profile ones. We are looking at some other things in the rail vision that get into more detail than this recommendation.
One of our favorite subjects, the Austin Brighton Western Ave, straightening the Mass Pike. Does that play into that as well in terms of aligning the commuter rail stop there, or is that a
So West Station's in here.
It's separate.
Yeah, not really as part of that.
Okay, the West Station, that's the fancy name.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, there's been some sort of, I don't want to say fanciful, I'll say fanciful ideas to sort of recreate an A line that would go over to Harvard's property along the river via a connection at the West Station, but that's really kind of pie in the sky. Is Newburyport Rockport connection at Sullivan something that's on the low priority radar or not at all on the radar?
So that's something that I don't think was at the top of our minds in the Focus 40 planning, but in the MBTA rail vision, it is something that we're looking at for Newburyport Rockport, or potentially for Haverhill if you relocated that connection from Malden in. And the thinking there, obviously at some point Sullivan could become its own destination. I think the thinking there is more, you know, to the extent that terminal capacity, drawbridge capacity at North Station was a constraint on running more peak service into North Station. Could you add a train maybe on the Newburyport Rockport line and have it, if there was a transfer point at Sullivan, would that be adequate for people? If it wasn't like, not replacing existing trips, but if you could add another peak train and have somebody come transfer to Sullivan to the Orange, because most people going into North Station, or a lot of them are connecting onto the Orange and Green to go somewhere else anyway. So we are looking at it in the rail vision.
Great.
Yeah. I mean, you have it already in the Haverhill line.
It's a really interesting idea with the orange line. That's fun, especially if they do. I see plans for the Hood Park being redeveloped and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, you're finally seeing some density there, which is, you know, frankly, Sullivan's the more natural node over there in terms of the roadway network and the highway network and the train. You know, like this. I remember when Assembly was moving forward, I remember thinking, you know, it's too bad all this development isn't happening at Sullivan, where there's already an Orange Line station, because that's sort of the historic node there. But it looks like you are starting, and we're part of the problem for that, because we own a lot of property right there. It's part of it, but it's good to see that Corp's starting to develop.
Well, backing up into the Orange Line and going over to the we're imagining there's a Sullivan Square Superstation. I mean, would that maybe entail kind of?
Okay, right. So that's how we were thinking of it more in the Orange Line context, right? So
but would that maybe entail something between Sullivan Square and Assembly Square? And maybe even the casino?
I think this is just, and everything we're imagining, these are things that may make sense to pursue, but they're not the next priorities, things that are going to be the current program. But yeah, I think that Sullivan Square, there are opportunities to improve the bus environment in the station, opportunities with the rebuild of the square by the city of Boston to improve bus facilities fanning out from the square or Rutherford Avenue. There's potential to obviously create a commuter rail connection point there. So there's a lot of different things that could happen. There's been talking about the Silver Line, urban ring planning, contemplated Sullivan being part of it. So Sullivan is a natural place to kind of keep checking back on and seeing if there's going to be some investment.
All right. Other things in commuter rail, double and triple track into add capacity. Yes. No. All right. And phase 2 South Coast Rail. How do you feel about that? Tom?
Yeah, but I'm biased towards the Blue Line expansion bill
Arcadi?
in favor of it instead.
So phase 2 specifically of South Coast Rail is the project as it kind of should be, rather than the sort of interim, kind of slow, circuitous route. I think there is potential to improve the phase 2 project in terms of cost effectiveness, but in principle, if they can do it cost effectively.
All right. Andrew, any feelings?
I don't know enough about this one in particular.
Okay.
No comment.
I have to agree that I don't really know much about it.
I share the cost concerns.
Is there any proof that extending these lines way out gets high ridership or saves dying towns?
Yeah, I hear you. And for a while.
It's a expensive, on a per rider basis, it is so expensive.
Right.
It's an excellent project if it were like 1/4 the cost.
Right. It just.
Yeah.
The operating costs is a huge loss. The amount of money you spend, the number of riders, I have a hard time.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, and I know how you feel, and I was feeling that, much like with the Green Line extension, I know it's not apples to apples. Is that they had been promised us, and that it would be a big disappointment to not give that to them, and that politically, that wasn't going to happen because there had been that sense of obligation that they were going to get it. But there was an interesting conversation with the mayor of New Bedford that I saw on NECN's Sunday business show, and the mayor was like, we are revitalizing down here. We're really trying to make this the hub of activity. And when they asked him specifically about the South Coast Rail, and he said, I just don't see, people, coming down much, or even going into Boston much for work. If anything, we're trying to get people, working out here and revitalizing things down here. So that it's kind of self-contained. So he said, it might have a marginal effect, but it wasn't like he was going, we absolutely got to have South Coast Rail, or I don't know how this region is going to survive. So that was interesting.
That is interesting. Stefan?
Yes?
Well, I want to add on to my comment is displeasure, or not displeasure. I have a lack of support for the phase 2 of the South Coast Rail, but that's within the scope of the Focus 40 for year 2040. I think that it may be worth it, but I think the phase 1 of passenger service via Middleborough, Lakeville, admittedly it's a bit roundabout, but it's existing right-of-ways that are in service now. I think that needs to be actually implemented first, and then have a period of X number of years of evaluation. I think
it's not by Middleborough Lakeville, it's by a new Middleborough station and then a new Middleborough Lakeville.
Oh, I meant the line of the station.
Yeah.
But yes, exactly, yeah, via the Middleborough Lakeville line.
And not really serving Taunton either.
True, yep,
Yeah.
yeah, all that, yeah, granted, but I've been on an excursion to Fall River via what the proposed route is. Again, minus the Middleborough Lakeville station that's there now, and it was, I thought, a quite reasonable route. Admittedly, it's like 15 mile an hour, like freight only speeds right now, but if that could be boosted up to 40, 50 miles an hour, that would be, I think, a very good amount of service for, at least for Fall River, for a period of time evaluation, like I said.
I think I might have misspoken. It was the mayor of Fall River, not the mayor of Bedford.
Okay.
Maybe I'm not sure at this point. You know, so I'm gonna skip around a little bit because I know Scott's probably gonna leave, and I just kind of want to maybe hear if he has some feedback on a couple of issues. On the resilient power supply or resiliency, we're going resilient power supply. I have been exercised, I must say, over the last 5 years about the low rating of power when we do the evaluation of our assets. And usually power usually comes in around in the twos. And for something that is so critical, for something that I think doesn't require a lot of money, because in the interim CIP after for 2016, so this was after the big snow event, 2015. It was not doing the 5-year CIPs, it was the interim one. They did the evaluation, and it didn't seem like they paid that much money, to get power into a higher rating. And for something that is just so critical to the system, I just feel that to a certain extent, I'm disappointed that power isn't in, we're doing now, but I know the CIP well enough to know that it's not there. But this is just going to be maybe in all caps. It's like, do the power resiliency, because we need redundancy, because we had that big incident in August, and you lose your power and nothing goes. Yes.
Remind me, is the plan in Focus 40 for generation or distribution or both?
So one thing that, this would actually be a really helpful comment, I think, for the ROC to give. I know that this is an area from just discussions we've had internally. We're probably sort of coming up from the staff on the operations side. We'll probably say a little bit more about power in the final version of this and try to elevate it as an issue. I think one of the challenges with this document as we were developing it is that leadership, or certain elements of leadership, wanted it to not look like a very inside baseball technical thing where we were focusing on power asset signal. They didn't want us to call it out in that way. They wanted it to be a little bit more about customer facing and talking about things like capacity, reliability. So I think a focus on power maybe kind of got lost in that translation a little bit, but I think that so internally there's a strong interest in kind of elevating that within the document. I think to the extent that an external group is also advocating for that, that probably will help us be able to kind of stay a little bit more definitively that needs to be part of the next phase of work that we're doing.
Yeah, I got to follow. I'm looking at the next CIP. Whenever I get a chance to comment on CIP, it's like, and I keep saying, it's like, what am I missing here? It's like, it just seems so obvious that power has to be immediate to me. And so to the extent it's not happening, it's like, what am I missing? Why isn't it happening?
And I think when you look at the Green Line transformation program under the Green Line section, I think that there's power investments that are sort of assumed in order to deliver the capacity improvements that are articulated in that program. But I think we're hoping to see that elevated in the
and definitely redundancy as much as you can. I mean, I know redundancy costs money, but as much as you can afford is what I think we should do and push to be able to afford more.
Sorry, Lynn. I wasn't sure if we have an answer that it's okay if we don't know, but I didn't hear. Is it generation or distribution or both? And if there's no answer for that right now, it's fine.
Yeah, I'm not the power sort of expert on that.
Okay, that's fine.
Issue. Yeah,
no problem. I'll look into it more.
Yeah, but we can. I mean, this is helpful input because it sounds like there's an appetite, at least with this group, to get a little bit more technical and get a little bit more wonky. So we can.
Yeah. Well, the reason I ask is I was under the impression that the poor rating was in the distribution primarily, and that the generation that the T has is actually adequate. I could be wrong. It's been a lot of years since I remember reading about that. But again, I thought it was the distribution that was the issue, and that we had we had decent reliability on the generation of it. To be determined.
And I can certainly try to get an answer back to the group.
That'd be great. Thank you.
And on we're imagining for the customer experience, the comprehensive and cutting edge digital MBTA given what you just said about how the powers that be, want this to be more customer facing, I get why that's there. But that, I have to say, it's like, well, first off, that should be all the time. It's like we want to have the best, digital experience that we can, because having a digital experience is part of having a good experience, period. It just happens to be mostly now the experiences have a digital face to them. But that just, that just has that kind of MBA, kind of vague, there's something in there that goes down smoothly. It's like, it's just kind of, it's like, all right, fine.
There were a lot of chefs in the kitchen, I'm sure a couple of them had ideas.
Yeah. Are we realigning our paradigm?
Yeah, right. And I'll say, coming out of the CIF group, when we talk about this, because Brian said it, not me, but it just speaks to me so much, says he felt that there wasn't enough of an emphasis about incorporating AVs, into how we are going to, how they'll be part of public transit, that we really need to think about. The technology's coming, and we need to do what we can to make sure that it fits into public transit, to the extent it doesn't replace public transit in a way, that fits our model of public transit, which is that it's affordable and equitable, meaning that it fits and it makes the environment what we want it to be, instead of it creating its own environment and us trying to adapt to the environment that is created. Yes?
Since you brought up AVs, I'm just curious if you or anybody else here has any particular thought about what aspect of the Focus 40 as it's drafted now aligns best with AVs, because to my mind, I think the dedicated busway build out is probably the best aligned with autonomous vehicles. Comments, thoughts on that?
No, I agree, and to the extent that we do that, it kind of sets the framework, that the roads are to be used in a way that benefits the greatest number of people, and not simply, cars. Which, if you just do single occupancy vehicles, it's not benefiting the greatest number of people.
Well, let's clarify that. Single occupancy, meh, but single occupancy, single owner, private ownership. I think isn't that more where we want to sort of dig. In other words, something that's like a bike share, but it's a car, and then autonomous. Isn't that the direction where we want to push it?
I see where you're going with that, to the extent that it maximizes utility of the roads. But my feelings are, I don't care who owns it. As long as it uses the road, in a way that maximizes the number of people, that can use the roadway.
Okay.
So I hear you, but I think to a certain extent, if you start saying, we want to dictate who owns something, you can get people kind of riled up. But if you say own it, but this is the cost of using the roadway as an SOV, versus using the roadway, as a shared vehicle that has more than one person in it, at a given point in time.
Oh, right, you've got a point.
Yeah.
Besides, the automation could be built into programmatically analyze whether or not there's one or multiple people in the car.
Right. But also, my other big thing is that we need to make sure not only that they're accessible to low income and elderly people, but also people with disabilities. And so the thing I think we need to wrestle with is, will each car be able to accommodate everyone? Because that'll probably increase the cost per vehicle. Or do we have enough cars that can accommodate people with various needs, so that when one of these vehicles is called, they're not waiting a disproportionately long amount of time. They should really not have to wait any longer than anyone else that calls an AV. So they have to be available in a high enough number, so that people who need them can get them. If each car isn't going to be built to accommodate
Universal,
everyone.
yeah.
So my understanding is that, I think in London, someone told me that every car, every taxi or something can handle a person, that needs a wheelchair. So in that case, you call any taxi, But here, I don't think that's the case, you know. So I think we need to wrestle with that. I mean, it's not much of a wrestle. It's more like, okay, well, this is the policy, and now this is the way, you know, the technology needs to be deployed in order to fit into the policy. And I know the industry will want to call it regulations, you know, but it's like we have laws. You know, those are regulations too. It's like, these are laws because this is the society that we want. And so we determine what society we want. And then, you know, the technology has to fit into it. It's not going to stop anyone, you know, from being creative and doing new stuff. But it's like, well, it's got to fit into the paradigm. And because as a democracy, that's the paradigm we decide upon. If we want to have another one, make your case and vote in the people that can create that one.
I just want to point out that we're coming up on 5:45.
Yeah, all right. And,
Well, Scott, do you have any final comments?
Well, just if there's any last questions.
Oh, go ahead, Craig.
I did also want to mention that happy to come back to talk about two projects that are ongoing right now that might be of interest. One is the MBTA rail vision, which I mentioned. So happy to come and talk with folks about that. That's focused on our commuter rail system. And then I think I might have stepped out of the room when you were talking about the bus network redesign. But that project's we're in the early stages of we're launching that project right now, and that's looking at kind of potentially transformative changes in the way the network is designed, particularly in areas that aren't well served today. So those are two projects. Happy to come back.
I love that.
And talk the group about.
Craig, did you have a question or comment?
If you gotta go, let me go. Well, the other thing, two quick things. One, when you're walking out, the other thing we were talking about is the Manhattan high-speed line. Focus 40, I think, as I recall, was very light in that area. Was that intentional because you're waiting on the results? You're waiting on the results of that consulting study? Yeah,
I know when I was last sort of managing Focus 4, where Jen took over, I know that there was ongoing planning work on that corridor, and I think we had a placeholder, but I'd have to get back to you with a specific answer on the high-speed line.
And the other so my mind, I think that was, my guess is that was intentional because no one wanted to touch it until that consultant report was out, and so it was kind of, that's why nothing was in there. The other areas more broadly, and I know you're off of kind of Focus 40 now, but if there's anything in Focus 40, I thought it was kind of, I didn't see the magic bullet I was hoping for. Is the South Boston waterfront seaport area that I didn't see any. Even in the kind of what we're proposing grant, whatever the last column is, the grant, what we're imagining there, is it we're crossing our fingers and hoping the cable car is going to work?
The gondola. The gondola.
No, I think it's probably a like a range of things that maybe still don't add up to the magic bullet you're looking for. I think it's looking at things like D Street. It's looking at the ramp. It's looking. Obviously, we're constrained by the fleet size today, given the special vehicle that we have to use in that corridor. Battery electric hybrids are kind of getting pretty close. We think to being something that we could kind of roll out on that route, which will allow us to increase frequency quite a bit. There's a lot of upgrades that need to happen in the tunnel, and those are highlighted here. I think the plan also speaks to the need to really kind of double down on water transportation. That can have a big role to play here. And then other things are a little bit more, tangential. One of the things that we've done in here is identify priority places, so places that already have all the necessary ingredients to support high quality transit, but maybe don't have as much as they need. And the Seaport District was one of those places highlighted there.
No, I think the board did an excellent job of pinpointing those areas. Like, there, Kendall, like, we were in a meeting tonight, so I love how they what they pinpointed. They hit the nail on the head. These are the big.
But there's more to be done. There's more to be done, and I think there are things that are not totally in our control, like space on the streets, where I think there are definitely things we could be doing, connecting North Station to the Seaport District via busways, BRT type treatments. Those are conversations that are always kind of ongoing.
Yeah, I think that's what I was more hoping for, was something more aggressive down Summer Street that would make the gondola look at the
We've been working with the developers and the city of Boston and both T-bus operations and MassDOT and the Secretary's office. We're looking at Summer Street. We're looking at the other major east-west streets in and out of the Seaport District. So it's something we're thinking about. And then the bus network redesign. That's another place where we may, because right now you're really, the SL3 helps, and it allows people from the Blue Line corridor in Chelsea to kind of get into the Seaport more directly. But we have a lot of employment districts that aren't that don't look like a central node, like a central hub of the bus network. And I think there's an opportunity with to do bus service differently to places like Longwood or the Seaport or even Kendall, and make those places a little bit more, you know, like Kendall has some bus service, but just because it happens to be like the closest place to feed buses into the Red Line. Like Central has more service feeding it, even though Kendall is clearly the bigger employment hub. So do we need to kind of like rethink, you know, how we're making those bus rapid transit connections and kind of center them around where the employment centers are. So I think it's there. If you add it all up, I think there's something there. But
do you have a stance on, I think it was at the Northern Avenue Bridge replacement? Should that be a dedicated? I have a personal stance, not one for the department, but I'd love to see it not be I'd love to see it be you know, not a general traffic facility if it were to be put in. I think it would be great for it to be a bike ped transit connection. That's my own personal opinion though. But yeah, we go over to the Seaport Aquarium Station, and it definitely adds to the horizontal and vertical distance using locally bridge to cross over. So we must having that. Okay, wasn't sure if you had any rapid transit. The other option is you could put rapid transit.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Congress Street to me, Congress and Pearl is the kind of like axis that you want to. And one thing that the one thing that I think believe strongly, and that when we're in these conversations with the city or with other stakeholders, is that don't feel like a connection from North Station to the Seaport has to go via South Station. Like to me, if you can get to South Station on commuter rail or the Red Line, you can get into the Seaport Line via the Silver Line. What you want to do is come up with a route that allows North Side commuter rail, Green and Orange Line customers, and Blue Line customers to kind of get in there and a really
without a $6 billion tunnel.
Yeah, but a really high quality dedicated facility on Congress would allow people to transfer to State from Orange or Blue, and Haymarket from Green, and North Station from commuter rail on that. So you don't need to connect into South Station, in my opinion. You just want to get those people in on their own corridor. That's my thought. There's other ideas in the building too that don't always line up with mine.
No, nice to hear these ideas.
Well, I want to thank you and your capable assistant for joining us.
Enjoy the first ride.
Great, great. Thank you so much. So if we can just wrap that up, that was great having Scott here, I
I guess
think.
one other thing I'll say about the bus, you know, and I'll make it short and then get right. Well, why don't you go first?
Actually, just a point of order. Can I bother you to slide to your left, because then that way I can capture you and Amy without having to pan the camera back and forth.
Come on.
I have to be on TV.
Yeah.
Well, I guess you can
Even just one chair over would be fine.
Oh, you have one chair?
Oh yeah, really. It's that. I mean, yeah. It was just that much.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well
Cozy
done.
up next to the line.
Yep. That's all. That way the viewers at home won't get seasick.
Right. And do you, all million, there's several million watching us tonight.
So
There's at least one.
Great, excellent. I'm very happy that you're here. Did you have a comment too?
That was it.
Okay, I'll
That's
let
my
Len, do you
order
want to,
for-
if we can just wrap
For
this up?
technology's sake.
So on the bus thing, so
Hi,
they
Rob.
they actually talked. Jen, this last year we talked this in June. Talked to the Regional Transportation Advisory Council, which the Rockets now part of, and we talked a bit about bus reimagining. And one of the things about the buses is that they work a lot better without the cars on the road. And so.
Rob, is that true?
A lot of things work better without cars on the road.
Buses work better without cars on the road. That seems we need an expert to weigh in on that.
And so now it's like, how do we develop a policy, that minimizes the cars on the road, and there are ways to do that, and it kind of fits in with the whole notion of how you do autonomous. It's like you can't do it SLV. If you want to do it SLV, then it's going to cost you a lot, and so we can come up with that kind of policy for SLVs, during rush hours, and I think that we get them off the road. The deal, though, is that if you are going to, and essentially, look, we'll just use the word for what it is. If you're going to tax people off the roads, then you need to provide them with the vehicles beforehand, for them to have access to. You can't make it inconvenient for people, to drive and then put them on to buses that are overcrowded and unreliable. So you got to build out your bus network first, which means come up with facilities, for the bus garages, have your fleet there, and then institute your policies that discourage people from being SUVs and encourage them to be in buses, and so that's going to require the legislature and the various entities in our local governments to be on board, and it's not a matter of who does that. Is it something that's done through MAPC, or is there some other coordinating entity that does it? I think it really would be better done by MAPC. I don't think the MBTA, should do it. It certainly doesn't have, the people power to do it, but I think it's really something for MAPC to do it. So we need to kind of get MAPC be working more with, I know they do a lot of work with MassDOT, not more, but it's like, we can try to put pressure or encourage MAPC, to do things like this, because a lot of times, with legislators, and other people, it's like, if they hear that the public's really interested in it, it gives the people who care about it, the emphasis to go forward with it, because they can say, well, it's just not me. It's like, the Rock wants to do it, or whatever, so.
Okay, and with that, we're going to close up the discussion of Focus 40. And I'm just going to take a few minutes to talk about, we have it listed as ethics training, but it's really not that. Through the State Ethics Commission, there's the conflict of interest training, and we're considered special state employees, even though we're not paid and we're not employees, but we are required to take the conflict of interest training every 2 years. I don't know, I'm sure some people here have taken it in the past. I've had to take it every 2 years due to other volunteer work that I do, and they actually do a pretty good job on their video. It's amazing, and I miss the same question every year. It still doesn't quite jive with the way I look at ethics, but you don't have to pass it 100%. And the training schedule, it starts in December of 2018. It's always in the even number of years, and it's due by April 2019. I will send everybody the link once it's out, and if you can do it, I'll get the link emailed to me in December. You need to do it on a computer or a laptop. You can't do it on a mobile or a tablet. However, if anybody needs me to just print out the materials, I can do that too. But we'll get that together. I will be sending out everybody the link. At the end of it, you get a certificate, and you type in your name and what organization that you're with. And then if you don't have a printer, just screenshot it and email it to me, whatever it takes. But I'll remind everybody of that in December. And so we are considered special employees. The other thing is that the public meeting training, I spoke to the AG's office, and although they hint that they'll come out and do the training, they actually don't have the resources. I'm going to send people the link to do this. Everything we're doing, I read the public meeting law, I read all of that, and what we're doing here, we're good. We're pretty much up to snuff. There are a few areas that we might want to tweak, but I know that actually Jacob's been great in terms of getting our minutes a little bit more, where we're listing who was present, making sure everybody's names are there, just small things like that. And I'm going to send everybody the link. Again, I don't anticipate we're going to see a lot of changes. I have not yet taken the training, so I don't know how well it's done. I assume it's done pretty well. I'm also going to put maybe an April deadline on that for people, and if we could just take it, that would be great. Just to get ourselves, I always like to avoid problems in the future by having things done right, sort of like up front. So I'm going to get out those to everybody. And again, you'll be hearing from me in December on the conflict of interest training, so we can just get that done. And unless anybody has any questions, that's all I really have to say on that. Yes?
Conflict of question is something that I'd like to be able to, you don't have to find out the answer for me, I'm happy to read up on it myself if I know where to read. Because we're in the 21st century, and because we have sort of on permanent loan a professional grade speakerphone from James J. that I usually don't bring unless there's a demand for it. I'm curious about public meeting rules that would pertain to chat participation via the online stream and or telephone in via speakerphone participation, because those are variations that I don't think we've ever analyzed and that's.
You know, I remember reading that, and I can't answer it for you right now, but I do remember reading what it is that we have to do in terms of accessibility
Yeah.
and making sure that anybody who wants to participate can. I will have that answer for you,
Okay.
however,
Like
next
I
time,
said,
because I
I'm-
think that, you know, as Len and I discussed on the executive call this week, you know, if there are people who are interested, it would be great, you know, any input we can have is a very good thing for everybody and for what our mission is in terms of, you know, being a liaison with the MBTA and sort of getting our voices heard. And I think that the more participation, and if it ends up being a conference call, as much as that seems sort of archaic right now, then that's what we'll do. But I will be able to answer more specifics for you. I'm sorry, I did read it all, but I can't remember
No,
the
it's fine,
specifics.
and you don't have to do all of the research. I mean,
Oh, I don't
by
mind
all
it.
means, lead the horse to water.
Yeah, no,
That'd be great.
I'm happy to answer that, because I really, you know,
Okay.
and I will also tell you where all the materials are for sure, but I like sort of digging into this
Okay.
and getting
Great.
procedures done, especially where at my young tenure here, I don't have a lot of the substantive going for me just yet, the knowledge base that the rest of you bring. So I will get that for you. And are we ready for any subcommittee reports?
Sorry, before
Please.
that, I was going to ask around the public meetings, how the subcommittee meetings are handled is a topic that I'm interested in.
Yes, those are also to be public, and if any members of the public want to go, those are considered public meetings. The executive meeting is not.
I don't think they're listed now on
They will be
schedules.
listed, we'll be
Oh.
putting them up. That's part of what we're going to do. That's one of the minor things that we have to do, but we will be listing those as well.
Thank
Because
you.
that is something that
Yeah.
requires, you know, public notice for. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, if we start getting people to go to those, we could have more ROC members. So,
I fear that will prevent us from using 45 High Street though.
if it does, it does. You know, I don't want that to be the case, but I mean, we're gonna have to see how it plays out. We may find that people are not interested in going
Yeah, somehow.
to the one at 45.
Somehow I doubt it.
Yeah, I just don't.
It's hard enough getting rock members to go.
That's what I'm saying. So trust me, if they show up at 45 High
Yeah,
Street, we're gonna deputize them.
They're showing up, it's like, you know what, you're going to rock,
Yeah, much like myself, they'll find themselves chairing the committee. So,
I didn't think it would be that.
I was wondering about 45 High Street myself, but
Yeah, 'cause I mean, if someone who's not on the committee, who's from the general public off the street shows up,
they don't
are they
really,
gonna get in?
but they don't
Are they
even,
allowed?
all you do now
Well,
is
they-
you
they-
sign
yeah,
in, you say you're here with the rock.
They're coming for rock meeting.
We don't have any rock ID.
I thought we were explicitly named as an allowed list of people by name.
There might have been one point in time when there was that list, but we've been through so many like security people and firms there, whatever, you know, that there's no longer a list.
I heard that last time, unfortunately, I had a meeting, I heard last time people couldn't get in.
Yeah, it was an issue.
Right,
you know,
so I think that, you know, if that ends up being an issue, then we'll move where it is. I mean, I think that we should be so fortunate. So, I also had thought of that, but I just didn't see where they're even asking us who we are when we come in, other than showing ID, and that we're going to the 6th floor to the Rock. I don't see that as being a big barrier unless somebody else does. Okay, shall we go on to the?
Speaking of 45 High Street, I'll jump in on the, I'll do the subcommittee.
Please.
Report. So we,
So it's marketing, communications, operations.
Had our meeting, and a number of folks, your attendance, so please help me jump in here when I'm missing things. We also had a Focus 40 conversation, which I think helped perform some of this today, so I don't want to repeat that. But then we had an interesting conversation that kind of came out of the Focus 40 conversation about why are our bus garages where they are, why are our train, not depots, but what's the, train yards, where they are. And we had a conversation about, are there opportunities to where are they in the right spot? And if we, should we have others in other places? Where this came about is we talked about, a lot of focus 40, some of the focus 40s go run more service, build more trains. We're at capacity in some of our yards, and you'll reach a point where you don't have as much as you'd want to add more service, and you want to, if you extend branches and the like, you run out of space to park vehicles at some point in the process. And that we had a conversation about that both from that perspective, from both light rail and from a light rail subway and a bus perspective. We learned, interestingly enough, that the T had more facilities at one point, but as along with urban decline, there was a drop in bus ridership, and we had a drop in bus ridership. They sold off properties. So a great example is on the red line not Shama, but before Shama.
Andrew.
No. Anyways, red line stop there. There's this random supermarket in the middle of a very dense urban area with triple deckers. And you say, why is that there? And it's because that used to be a bus depot. It used to be, before they extended to Ashmont, that used to be a rail yard for the red line. And they sold it, and they put a supermarket there. That's why that's why they had enough space to put a full-blown strip mall, shopping mall right in the middle of the city.
And it was the Ashmont extension that.
I get it now. I'm blanking if it was the Ashmont extension or if there was a bus depot there. I don't remember what that is.
I'd love to find out. I think I missed that part of the meeting. I got a little bit late. That's fascinating.
Anyways, and then after that we did. Rob, this is where I'll let you jump in here. Rob, he was a little bit of a preview about the work he and his team are doing regarding redesigning bus routes and that whole process. We kind of got a preview of it. When it becomes more public, I think Rob, you graciously said you'd bring some of the more specifics of some redesigns to the subcommittee to kind of get in the nitty gritty and kind of go through one by one. But I know folks say, these bus routes have been around forever, haven't things kind of gotten aligned around them, but we ended up coming up with a great example of one spot in particular. We were talking about a spot on the Milton-Dorchester line, which I happen to live near there, where the buses today go up and take a right and then take a left. And they used to go up, take a right, and then take a left. They used to take a different right and left. And the reason why is they redesigned the route 15 years ago when they were one of the original bridge they went over had to be replaced. That bridge was out for a year or what have you, and then they never flipped the route back because they built up enough ridership over the old route. So there may be opportunities like that where we flip things over for a reason that was a good reason at the time, but maybe we can tweak them back. And Rob used some other examples of combining routes that kind of are circuitous, or I'm not sure. I do use some good examples of opportunities in Dorchester, but we'll have more to share, I think, when we get into the nitty gritty, and maybe we'll invite Rob back for a formal presentation of this broader route when the subject is developed. That sound good to you, Rob?
Yeah, that's fine.
That'd be great.
If I can jump in, just FYI, the FMCB meeting yesterday, there was a pretty lengthy presentation about some of the specifics of the bus reroutes, and that's recorded and posted online. So if you want to go back to the tape and see that presentation, I was there, it's worth watching.
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, I'll just add on to that. It was a discussion. It didn't get into the nitty gritty of any particular routes, but more of the structure of which we're doing the analysis. And just to quickly summarize it, there are 3 ways that we are looking at making changes right now. One is the quarterly process, by which we've always used that 4 times a year. We make minor changes to run times, to trip departure times, to schedules. Then what they're calling Tier 1 in the Better Bus project is what I talked to you about that last week. These routing changes, all revenue neutral ideas with the budget that we currently have. So if we have to add somewhere, we're going to have to take from somewhere else. But that'll be the list of route specific ideas that certainly a lot of people will have a lot of interest in talking about. And then tiers 2 through 5 are 4 different scenarios of different investments that the T will need to meet various standards, be it the service delivery policy, be it the key bus route standard, for different combinations of routes and collections of routes. So all the details about all that will certainly be coming out in somewhat of the near future.
Is near future like 3 months or 6 months or?
Well, I think we're still debating exactly when the outreach is going to be, whether we try to fit it into the November, December, because we're not going to do it prior to the election. That's just not going to happen. So that being the holiday season, that has a disadvantage of doing that. So we'll see. I mean, it may be in December, it may be in January.
Thanks.
Soon for us.
Yeah, January, February. Yeah.
We have a lot of work to do before it goes out to the public. We have to analyze all these ideas and really finalize the packages of investments that we want to have. We want to show to the public and to the board.
Right.
Yeah, thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
Anything else, Craig?
Anybody else pretend anything else I missed in that
I think
meeting?
we also talked about late night, maybe what you all were doing with late night.
Yeah, it was pretty recent. 2 weeks ago, the new trips and additions to service that we added for the fall rating. We had several new operators that the board paid for. So we had new service hours to work with, and with that we added additional trips to increase the span of several routes. We added several late night trips at right around 2 o'clock in the morning, departing from Haymarket, kind of a network of trips to go outward from Haymarket.
How were those attended? Do you have any numbers on that?
I haven't seen any numbers. Haven't seen any numbers yet. I mean, we're
Right.
still in the early stages of it. We're still collecting all that data. So when we get a couple more weeks in, I think. I mean, the whole charge of the board, and this was the same thing with the early morning service that we added back in the spring rating of this year, is to study it, look at it, and come back to the board and see how successful it was, and see if we could move on to the next phase of adding more early morning service or adding more late night service.
I'd be really interested to hear how I hope it's successful,
I hope so too.
especially the early morning. I hope that's successful.
So you know what's driving the desire of the board to do these pilots?
I couldn't speak, but I mean, we certainly are. Whenever we get new resources, we're able to do things like add service to early morning, late night. We had 5 new operators that we had available for the fall rating that allowed us to invest 4 of those 5 operators in the Route 111, which certainly needed a lot of help in terms of updating run times and what with the bridge work that's upcoming on the 111. So that was a big thing for that. For the winter rating, we have 5 operators that we are investing into a couple key bus routes in the Cabot Garage, the 1, the 47, and the 66. Some of our highest ridership bus routes. So those, again, will be updating the run times where we can with those resources, keeping frequencies the same or improving them if we can. So those are resources that when we get them, they're certainly put to good use.
Thank you.
So a question on this. So what accommodations do you have to make for the ride with that service?
So in our existing service area, the ride already exists.
Yeah.
The only time that we really have to think about additional ride service is when we go into new areas, when we go into a new town, essentially, or the 3/4 mile buffer that surrounds any of our routes, because that's how the ride service area is defined. If that extends into an additional town, because certain towns pay the assessment for ride service, and if you don't, my understanding is you have to provide that service yourself, the paratransit service, I mean to say.
What are the operating hours of the ride?
Oh, you mean like in late night service?
Yeah,
And,
yeah, that's what I meant.
I believe the ride has to cover all, all operating hours that the MBTA covers,
So then, you see, as you may recall, I mean, I used to just like, almost every time I talked, said, I want to see 24/7, bus service, and then the compelling argument that made me stop talking about it was that it cost a lot to support the ride at the time. I mean, so much more than actually than just providing bus service itself. And so it's like, okay, so I get it, and I understand you just don't have the money to do it, and rather than you definitely want ride support for all those hours, and so I was just kind of wondering that, because it seems like as soon as I gave up on it, there was like all these pilots, that were coming along persistently on expanding late night service. I'm glad to see it, but I just kind of wonder, like, how is it, that we're doing so. I was just kind of wondering what kind of ride support we got,
I admit I'm not entirely sure.
Okay, it's fine.
My recollection is that in the budgets for the pilots, they included mostly like dispatching service, because there wasn't expected to be much demand for actually delivering rides.
Right.
But there was a decent chunk to have people available in the call center to expand the hours correspondingly. I'm saying that from memory.
Okay.
But that they just decided, yep, it's worth that for, especially since the expansions of service earlier and later were really targeted to very specific lines and routes that were crowded at the first or last.
Right. All right.
Trips.
Good. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. All right. Cool.
Shall we, who's here for the capital investment and finance?
Well, I was hoping Brian would be here because he's doing the last half of it. Okay, I have, I'm going to, I think I have one more thing on operations. No.
Okay.
No, that was it. Actually, you actually had explained too about why there was no midlife overhaul on the red line cars, and because I was kind of curious about why there was no midlife overhaul, and essentially they kind of scrapped the whole midlife overhaul model for kind of swapping out components as they needed replacement. And
Preventative maintenance.
Preventative maintenance.
So you're skipping preventative maintenance,
No,
or
no.
we're adding preventative?
Doing preventative maintenance instead of doing a one-time midlife overhaul.
Okay, and what is the midlife of a red line car? Like, how long is a red line car supposed to last? What
It's
did
supposed to be 30 by the federal spec, so midlife is 15.
Right, okay,
People
so
on the
that,
federal
but
doesn't.
it's supposed to last 30 years?
Yep.
Okay.
And of course now that makes us, have even a greater need, for a nice asset management, system, and so, we'll talk more about that, maybe even in.
We have a nice asset management system, whether it's used or not, or being updated or not.
There are asset management systems in place.
But a better one, we're always going to do better, So, for CIP, CIF, we ended up talking a lot about the Focus 40, because, well, first off, it's timely, and also Dave Perry, who's going to talk to us about capital delivery, has to postpone until next month, and that was pretty much it. We spent like, I would say, 75 of the 90 minutes on that, and we talked a little bit about some of the reports made from the FMCB. I'm trying to remember what they were, so I can't remember because I didn't take notes. I'll see if I can pull it up. Sorry.
While we're paused for a second, for the benefit of our guests from the media, if there's any acronym soup where it's kind of impenetrable and you would like an explanation, grab us afterwards. We'll be happy to tell you, because
Yeah, I made some notes. So
We
Yeah.
throw a lot of
There's a
acronyms
lot of
around it.
acronyms.
Yeah,
thank you.
sure thing.
No, I guess it just wasn't that important. I mean, so most of it was on Focus 40. So, and we've covered that and then some
Okay.
in this meeting. So,
Okay, unless anybody has anything else on the subcommittee reports to bring up. Did everybody have a chance to look at the minutes that were posted? And we had 2 months worth of minutes. We had July and, we didn't have a meeting in August.
Mhm.
So June and July, correct, to look at for the meeting minutes? Did anybody have any comments on those? Yes.
Great job.
Really good
Yeah,
job.
that executive
They
summary.
were beautiful.
That executive summary, I mean, my goodness,
Yeah,
wow.
you did, I know how much time you put into those, and I wanna really thank you, they were terrific. So, I'll entertain a motion to approve both the June and July minutes.
Motion to approve.
No, looking for somebody to just make the motion, say,
Well, I was saying motion to approve.
oh, motion approved, I'm sorry, I think you said
Second.
motion
I
approved.
mumbled it out, sorry about
Yeah,
that.
sorry, yeah. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Minutes are approved. Reports on external meetings, old business, new business.
So, what's the
Len?
RTAC meeting? Guess what we talked about in the RTAC meeting?
Mattapan High Speed Line.
Huh?
Mattapan High Speed Line.
Focus 40.
Focus 40, yeah, that's what I
So,
figured.
and so Jen Slosser talked with us in June, talked to us about talked about it, and in that group meeting, they were more so, I guess the focus there was more on immediate plans. I mean, they really wanted to see, what was going to be done now and wanted more emphasis on what was going to be done now in order to make, transit better. I mean, interestingly, even though it's a regional transportation plan, which it deals with all modes, there's still overwhelming interest, in transit, more than anything else. So it makes us feel right at home. That was pretty much it. And that was really all of it. The rest was just getting ready to elect new chairs. That group.
Anybody else want to discuss a meeting? Any external meetings? Any old business? Wow, we're gonna have I can't believe that we actually might have a short meeting.
Well,
Don't you dare say anything about electric vehicles again either.
Okay.
we have
You got his bill.
So new business meeting. Did you bring the calendar, the meeting schedule for?
Oh, I printed those out.
Oh, there are. Okay.
Or maybe that's.
So there's a tentative meeting schedule for 2019. We have to.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, we have to approve that. I mean, probably by the end of this month, because I need to start talking with Trish to talk with people to reserve out space.
Okay.
So we start reserving space in October.
Okay.
So
when do you want to hear back? Should we look at this now, or should
we
we?
could now. I mean, so you can keep your copy, and if there are any conflicts with important holidays, the only other holidays other than the standard, market closure holidays are Passover and Yom Kippur. I'm pretty sure I don't have those. And for May, I just wanted to draw your attention to May because the Float Rock meeting in that month is scheduled for the day after Memorial Day. And so if people don't like that, then we can shift everything up a week and treat it like we do December. Because in that case, the Float Rock meeting would have been on Christmas Eve. And we know that's a no-go, so I pushed everything back.
Christmas Eve is gonna happen, but it depends on your family. You may have a higher attendance than you think. So, okay, yeah.
Well, Well, then, if the group wants to pull it back, to the 24th, we can,
Can we just say we have it on that night? Okay, good, thank you.
Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you.
So if, well, can I just hear how people feel about that May date? I mean, do you want it the Tuesday after Memorial Day?
Probably okay.
I'm indifferent.
I'm indifferent.
I generally don't like the same comment I made a year ago. I like the Mondays better than Tuesdays, but I'm in the minority. I'm the minority on that. So.
Alright.
As is fine.
As is
As
fine
proposed
with
is
me.
fine.
So everyone's fine with Tuesday
Yeah.
after Memorial Day?
Yep.
And I want to thank you very much for putting this together.
No problem.
Thank you.
No problem. And check the dates if you can every once in a while. I screw up and
I'll go home and I'll check these.
Yeah, me too.
Great, thank you very much. It looked like Wade had something to
Yeah,
say.
why don't you go first? I have a couple things.
Sure. Yeah, mine actually is somewhere in between old and new, depending on how you look at it. I believe since we last met in July, Keolis rolled out the iPhone app with hardware to read credit cards via swipe and Bluetooth rechargeable battery receipt printers to all the conductors. If I understand it right, 100% of Keolis conductors and assistant conductors now are armed with the electronic fare acceptance, which to my understanding means the old, the proper term for those slips suddenly escapes me. The things that were rectangular,
Those punchy things?
yeah,
That was
they're not called rebates. The official term for those things that the conductors punch when you buy a ticket on the train, that's called a rebate. Those are gone. That's gone the way of the dinosaur, and so have those. No, I'm lying. Not the punches, because the punches are still used if somebody presents a paper ticket that they bought at an AFC vending machine. But the old-fashioned rebates, no more. I'm very interested to know if in a 2, 4, 6 month period there's any shift in revenue or ridership counts because of that. Depending on who you ask, there in the past had been some fast and loose games with the rebates. I don't want to cast aspersions on anybody, but I think the idea with the electronic media was to not only make it a little bit quicker but more accurate. I would love to have some follow-up on that.
Was this fast and loose from the consumer perspective or from the, I never understood how they kept track of
From
all that stuff.
from the train crew
Okay.
staff, because it was a tedious process. I
Sure.
mean, even if you're very quick with the punches, it's,
Right.
yeah. But I've talked to a couple of different conductors who say that with the phone app, particularly if you're using a credit card, it's tap, 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 swipe, print out, move on.
Terrific.
That's
So
it for that.
So they still take cash, is that right?
Yes,
But
exactly.
they use that as a point of sale terminal.
Okay, can I ask Wade what would you
Yeah,
want
I
to
got a
say?
bunch of short things.
Sure.
Sorry about that.
No, don't.
First, I'm sorry I'm so late. The 88 bus is usually reliable. Tonight, about 3 went out before 1 came in, which is really odd. And last night, they were off by about 10 times as much as normal, coming late night from Davis. So that's just one observation.
We'll be making some runtime updates to the 88 for the winter rating. I don't know if that's the source of your problem, but
Well, it's usually one of the more reliable routes where I am. So usually it's pretty good. It's just a little surprising. Second thing I wanted to mention was CT2 last night. I was using it at evening rush hour to get Kendall. There was a new substitute bus driver in the middle of rush hour, and we had to put people up front to tell her which streets and corners. And I mean, it wasn't entirely not her fault, but she was frozen at every intersection except when there was someone who was a normal rider to help her. She had a printout, but if you've never driven route before, that's a little challenging on that big route. Again, just an observation. I can't remember if I mentioned this last month, but I flew in the last Friday evening to Logan of August when all the students were coming and a lot of other tourists. And the Silver Line was an unbelievable disaster. The countdowns would go from like 18 to 3 and then back up and then back down and then back up. And because of the luggage and the delay in between Silver Line vehicles, it took about 10 minutes at each stop to get people off with luggage and then back on with luggage. So, I mean, a suggestion for long into the future, on really busy weekends, it might be worth having a few expediters at Logan. The Silver Line is especially challenging in evening rush hour. You know, it was okay with Maine. People were fairly good natured, but half the people didn't know where they were going. They're coming to Boston for the first time. It was really unusual. So that's 3 quick things. Red Line, Porter to Harvard, I ride it mostly in the evening, and it gets up to high speed, and the train is really banging side to side. I mean, much more than I've noticed in before. I mean, to the point where it's a little bit scary how much it's banging over the rails.
Didn't we get a presentation on rail tie replacement there, like 2 years ago?
Yep.
A while ago.
So is this the new improved?
I have no idea, but you know, I've been here more than 30 years. It's the scariest Red Line trips that I've been on.
I just took that stretch and we were going at pretty high speed and it was smooth, so I'm gonna bet.
From Porter to Harvard.
Yeah, I'm gonna bet that was specific to that train set or that
Well,
car.
it wasn't one trip. It was
How many-
multiple trips in a week.
Okay. Do you remember if they were the old, mid-age, or new?
No, I don't.
I never noticed, but I'm always sitting down and reading, you know, so I'm not saying you're wrong, but it's just like I can be kind of insensitive. at
Well,
things
it's
like that,
late,
you know, so.
it's late, so there may be less trains, they may go a little faster, I don't know. I
Maybe
just
it's
had
like
not
this.
noticed it before, to be honest with you.
I think more often than not, that's to do with the vehicle and not the train.
Yeah, it could be. One of the recent trains or cars I was on was the, have the seats out of the car, but I don't think this was an old train. Anyway, so that's the ops things. 2 things I want to throw out for perhaps consideration more on the capital side. There was another article on West Station today, well, on the Turnpike $1 billion proposal in Alston to move it, to make it a little bit easier for Harvard to build. And $1 billion is a lot of money. And then they're connected with that are a series of West Station articles on basically everybody wants their one train to go to Kendall Square. And so those are both Alston issues, and I'm wondering if it would be worth having someone come just chat with us about Alston. And I'm also concerned that we would entertain any of these single commuter rail to Kendall ideas as opposed to a more robust, honestly, this is just my personal bias, but I would much rather see urban ring, urban transit, rail-based from Harvard, Alston, and BU through Kendall over to Sullivan, up by the casino and around to Chelsea or wherever. I mean, that corridor's already there. It was projected, the full urban ring was projected to carry over 200,000 people a day when it was last studied in full, and compared to one-off commuter rail first it was the lieutenant governor from Worcester wanted a one-off Worcester train to go to Kendall, and now this West Station idea is to go to Kendall, and I just think it's death by 1,000 cuts instead of thinking more robustly about what might work best for the most people. And then lastly, just mention the GLX. I try not to mention GLX a lot because it's in my backyard and I don't want to be.
It's a Green Line extension. It's one
Yeah,
of the few that I
sorry.
know.
I'm sorry. And they're moving really fast with it. They're working flat out even on Sundays. But a couple things that have come up.
It's so weird, by the way, to just, like, I have a process that's actually ongoing.
I'd say it's
But-
50% done.
Ooh.
Well, they
It's
did
they-
about
they-
30, they
Stations
did
already-
35% before they shut it down for your
Okay.
consideration.
There's no ground broken on the stations though, is there?
No, but the stations are the very last thing.
Okay.
There's demolition to make way for them.
Sure. right.
Yeah,
I would
so,
say-
but the two little things that I want to bring up is, our MEPA process requires environmental filings anytime more than 5 trees with 14-inch caliper are cut down. Well, they stripped a mile of very large hillside, probably 1,000 trees. And there's no mention in the FEIR or the federal assessment. I mean, by strip, I mean, it is clear cut for a mile.
They did the similar things on the Fitchburg line, and I think it's either part of seasonal resiliency or
Positive
PTC.
trend, yeah.
Or
Yeah,
what,
I-
I'm
Positive-
sorry.
It might not
positive trend
even be
control.
GLX
Okay.
related.
Yeah, I
No, it's for GLX.
Yeah,
They
I-
stripped the southwest side and not the northeast side. The
Yeah.
southwest side is one with the big hillside.
But it's still the within the boundaries of the existing right of way for the railroad, right?
Well, it's a hillside, yeah.
Yeah, I think that falls under FRA guidelines for agriculture, not for foliage cutback. Because if Keolis crews want to go out and mow
These
down
trees
the
were
sides
80
of.
to 100 feet high.
Yeah, I understand it. But
Well-
if it, just because it hasn't been done in like 50 years doesn't
No,
mean
this
that they
is a
can't.
project. This is
Okay.
a project-related move.
Yeah, I heard about that, and I thought it was just.
The 5-tree 14-inch caliper rule is part of the transportation section of the Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act office. It's clearly something that was not paid attention to in either the large state filings or the federal filings. So, I mean, it is what it is, but I just thought I would mention it. And then,
I'll ask people I know about that, because I know people who are former right-of-way maintenance people. They would know about that.
yeah, this is a maintenance, it's capital. Then lastly, and again, this may be something that's unavoidable, and I don't want to be a homer, but we paid so much attention to Fast 14 on I-93, where we placed 14 bridges in a couple weekends, and paid enormous attention to the BU Bridge. A couple times it's been shut down, and now to Harvard Alston. And the Broadway Bridge in Somerville is anticipated to be out for a year. And that's one of the main, there's only 3 longitudinal big streets in Somerville. And 90% of the orthogonal streets are cut by the rail lines, because all the northern rail lines go through Somerville, none of them go through Cambridge, except for Porter to Alewife, one of them. And so 90% of the orthogonal streets are already shut off anyway. But, I mean, it is what it is, but a whole year shutdown on a bridge, basically between Sullivan Square and Tufts and Davis Square, is fairly significant when they've shown an ability to do setup and then have fairly rapid replacement of decks. Anyway, I mean, it's not my issue. I'm not really. I'm more concerned about whether the buses can make the corners, because we've had some trouble when we've rerouted buses off of shut down main streets, and it could be a city problem more than a state problem. But the buses can't turn through the lights, except after all the cars have gone, because they don't put the stop signs back for them. Anyway, so sorry, but there's 6 things.
No, but I think that is surprising when we've seen, you know, how quickly a lot of this bridge work has been going on, to hear that something's gonna take a full year.
Yeah, and
It
it's
just
not
doesn't
nearly as
line
significant a
up.
bridge as those
Right,
others.
yeah, I don't know
Well,
if anybody has any input on
Well, it would
that.
be capital allocation, so I'm sure, for me, I'm not sure when it showed up, you know, in,
About a
presumably
month.
MassDOT's.
It
Yeah.
showed up a couple months ago in some of the, they have station area meetings with neighborhoods, and it showed up in some of those. So they did postpone the shutdown till after holidays, because there's a lot of merchants involved where they will be completely cut off.
Right, but that project would have shown up in someone's CIP a number of years ago, right? Unless it's an emergency?
No, it's just it's part of the Red Line project. It's not any separate line item.
Did you have any?
Well, I grew up at the end of that street, so I can speak to this a little bit. It was, originally they were talking about other things, but it was essentially, when GLX was overhauled to make it fiscally viable, this was one of the many things that kind of had to go a certain way to make the project doable. And Mayor Burke in Medford is working.
It's not in Medford.
Well, it's in Somerville, but it's right along the line, and a lot of that traffic will end up flowing
Yeah,
to Harvard
that's
Street
true.
and
No,
Medford.
that's true.
And
That's right.
so they're working with some of the municipalities to mitigate some of the issues. I also know that I pushed pretty hard to get an explanation for why it wasn't avoidable or why it was unavoidable. And as someone who grew up there, I was pretty satisfied that this was unavoidable in terms of this kind of shutdown, which was disappointing, but it seems like it kind of is what it is at this point. But there is room to work with the municipalities on mitigating some of the issues that might come with it. And that's kind of where they're looking now, I think.
Thanks.
Thank you, thank you. Anybody else with old business, new business, reports and external meetings?
Yep.
Oh, great, I'm sorry,
I
please.
have just one very quick item. I've noticed that one of the bus stops near where I live has a sign on it informing people that the bus stop will be closed permanently soon and directing them to the next bus stop, which is 150 feet away. So I want to thank service planning for actually going through and doing this review of bus stops and finally addressing some of the more ridiculous situations that have accumulated on some of these.
Which stop, which line?
This is on the 70. This is
God bless
the
you.
Main Street at Chestnut Street stop, which is like 150 feet from the Main Street at Green Street stop. It's literally like across the street.
Oh, yeah, right. I know what you're saying. All right.
Stefan?
A question for the group that I mentioned in email, but it was earlier today, so people might not have seen it. Again, in a perfect world, with online streaming and the ability to accept questions via chat on the online stream page, in a perfect world, we'd have people actually engaging us that way. There's a feature where you can have more than one person being a moderator. This may be a solution looking for a problem, but is anybody interested in perhaps being a co-moderator with me? I mean, again, I haven't seen a single person chat back via the online stream, but I don't want to wait and until there's this flood.
But there's the flood of comments.
Yeah, when the flood comes, I'm sure I'll sign up, but it's gotta be at least 100 people.
I just felt about it. I thought
You
about
get 100 people.
No, well, you need 100 comments. You can have 100 people, but only 50 comments.
That's totally fine. I just want to make sure that I
Right.
didn't not raise the issue, because I felt like it was due diligence on my part, being the techie guy.
Right, yeah, so no,
Yeah,
you got your back,
your
your backup's here, we got your backup. I had a question actually for Rob, only because I'm sort of fascinated by some of the stuff that I've learned here, which is with the orange line down right now and all the buses, when they're doing the project on the weekend, and all the buses go right by my house, and I'm wondering, then does that bus work affect the bus routes during the week? I've become infinitely fascinated with the bus drivers. But now that I know, and I don't know if it's going to be another weekend, but the last couple of weekends down Columbus Ave, we've had the shuttle buses, because from Back Bay to maybe Jackson, I don't know how far it goes. So how does that affect the other bus routes that you're running buses constantly?
So certain bus replacements, we hire private contractors to do it.
Okay.
That's how we're handling the Wollaston shutdown. We have Yankee is the private contractor that's operating that shuttle service. Other bus replacements, particularly those that are during off-peak times, like on weekends, we will tend to handle those ourselves, because whereas we don't have peak buses to put out to handle the red line 24/7, we do have buses on the weekends.
Okay.
But it does have an impact.
Because there's just so many buses. I mean, they're doing a great job, and I live right there, and they're doing a wonderful job, and they're really keeping the streets clear, and those poor buses, when they hit Columbus and Mass, and they've got a stop right there, and then they've got to take the left, and they're doing a wonderful job. And I thought, wow, is this affecting other people?
Yeah, so the constraint is not in buses for those operations. The impact really, to the extent that, and I'm not really involved in it, but which I understand it, is when you have operators, MBTA regular operators, providing those weekend services. They fill up their 40 hours.
Right, and that's what I'm concerned
And
about.
so they either will get overtime for that week, or they have the option to just work their 40 hours.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons that we need cover.
More
We
drivers,
need drivers that are kind of on the back seat, ready to step in. And that's one of the things that the board has, along with the additional drivers that I spoke about that went to service improvements. They had the budget to hire 35 new operators for cover, and those new operators are being hired right now. And my understanding is that it's really helping in terms of drop trips, because that's what the impact is.
Exactly, right.
And
Excellent.
So.
Good.
Any other new business? I wanted to get back to, Stefan, I wanted to get back to you first on your 100 people that are chatting and have questions. That we don't, member of public bodies have a responsibility, to ensure that remote participation meetings is not used in, blah, 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 blah. The Attorney General's regulations do not require that a public body permit members of the public to participate remotely.
We don't have to, but we can.
Right, but we
Yeah.
can. Right, but I'm just saying that we don't have to.
Right, okay.
But so if we reach like 99 and Craig isn't here, we'll just shut it down.
Yeah, I was thinking more in terms of the, I was thinking more in terms of the public comment period.
Right. Yeah. No, listen, I think that's great, and I think you're right that if I have been on these things in meetings at work, and you need moderators
Yeah.
to sort of group the questions, and
Yeah.
But not to contain their comments amongst themselves. If they want to have flame wars amongst themselves, just let them go.
So did you have one more?
Well, yeah, I mean, how are we on time so far, first of all?
First of all,
We don't have
times.
to stay here the whole time.
No, I know.
Like, just for the sake of like.
Right.
Each
Well,
chit-chat.
at 6:50, I'm looking for public comments, and I don't.
Okay.
Each piece of new business has to be progressively more interesting.
Right.
All right, well, then I'll give you one.
Oh no.
On August 28th, the MBTA real-time data group made, I think, what's a pretty significant change to what's displayed on the countdown signs. And instead of waiting for the next marketing operations subcommittee, because I know a few who only come to go to the capital one, I wanted to put it out there that the change is now that if a train is significantly delayed and not moving, instead of that number of minutes display, which, as somebody was pointing out earlier, it can go from 3 to 18 to 3 to 18.
Get it, yeah.
Yeah. The change now is that the display display will say stopped and a number of stops away, or
Right.
not moving, number of stops away. I wanted to sort of inquire of everybody, have they seen that, or could you keep an eye out, because the accuracy of that is, I don't want to say questionable, but I'm curious if you see it and you think it is accurate.
Well, they're doing that a lot at Davis,
Yeah.
and I think it's helpful. It used to always say Braintree train's 2 minutes away.
Yeah.
It'd say that for 10 minutes or 20 minutes.
Yeah.
It's much better to say, stop at 2
One
stops
stop away or one stop away.
From my
Okay.
point of view.
Yeah.
I mean, why put up a false expectation on it, the train's gonna arrive, and just leave it there?
Right.
I think it's much better.
The only place where I think they do need to figure out a better solution is at the end of the lines.
Mhm.
So I boarded at Ashmont, and it said the next stop, the next train at Ashmont is 1 stop away, or the next train at Alewife is 1 stop away. Well, you're not 1 stop away; you're in the yard right there, and you're going to get coffee, and you just haven't got the line going. It's a different. It should be a different. I think the calculations behind the scenes can probably be the same. It should be smart enough to know on the end of the line to say we're
Maybe we'll start soon.
We'll start soon.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying.
It's an awkward end of the line.
So that's it.
Meeting
For,
line.
that's it for reports and external meetings,
Yeah.
old business, new business, public comments. I don't know if there's any members of the public here. Okay.
Nicely
Meeting
done.
adjourned.
So I stop the stream, is that an official?
That's an official.
Okay.
We're
We
done.
need a motion?
Okay, does it,
Motion to
I
adjourn.
really gonna harm the person who has a problem with this.
Motion not to take.
Yeah, no, okay. Any opposed? Okay, so
Well, the
moved.
person that was watching, just stop watching.
Oh, no! Natalie, thank you for coming.
Did everybody